Hey everyone, so my name's Miriam, and today I'm going to be presenting on using the table talk strategy with The Boy in the Striped Pajamas novel by John Boyne. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a New York Times best-selling novel. It's a young adult novel and it was released in 2006. In 2008, there was a movie released by the same name, also called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, that some of you may have seen. The novel is set in Germany, as you might have guessed, in the midst of World War II. The main characters are Bruno, who is an 8-year-old boy at the start of the novel, living in Berlin, his sister Gretel, who's 12, Bruno's mother, and his father, who we learn is a Nazi commandant, Maria, who's a servant that works in their house in Berlin and then goes with them to Outwith, quote unquote, but more about that in a minute. Lieutenant Kotler, who's an SS soldier, Pavel, a prisoner who also works in their kitchen, and then finally Shmuel. He is the boy in the striped pajamas that Bruno strikes up a friendship with. So without giving too much away about the novel, I'm just going to describe the conflict a little bit. So we've got Bruno's father, who is designated by the Fury, that's what Bruno calls the Führer, or Hitler, as an important man with an important job. His dad is a commandant, and he relocates the family from their home in Berlin to Outwith, which is what Bruno calls this new place that they move. You can make your own conclusions about what that could mean. And Outwith is a large Jewry home in the German countryside. It's a graying house and it's adjacent to a large fenced-in camp that Bruno says is full of grandfathers, fathers, and boys, and Bruno can see all of them from his window. So this new home challenges Bruno to make sense of his surroundings, especially when it comes to his new friend Shmuel, who lives on the other side of the fence. The novel explores several major themes. The first one is the timelessness of war. The fact that the novel comes from Bruno's perspective makes the story not exactly accurate, but it does suggest that wars and genocides happen all over and how prevalent they are, and how so many of the experiences really transcend the situation. We've also got the issue of indoctrination. We get to see this over and over in the novel through Bruno's interactions with his father, his teachers, his sisters, and what that really means. There's the theme of complacency and the justification of evil actions. This is both on an individual level and on a group level. There's the theme of arbitrary boundaries, which of course is exemplified by the fence that divides Shmuel and Bruno. And then finally, a little more hopefully, we have the theme of human nature. And we really get to see the innocence of these two boys and the friendship that they strike up. Now we're going to move to a discussion of table talk, our literacy strategy, and why it's useful. Well, first of all, table talk can be used to activate prior knowledge. Along with this, it can also be used to build background knowledge. So students get to start thinking about what they know about the subject, and then they get to share it with people at their group who may or may not have the same level of background knowledge as they do. Table talk can also be used to encourage active listening, since students are both sharing their own thoughts and writing and responding to the thoughts of their partners and group members. And then finally, table talk can also be used to set a purpose for the lesson. To get started with table talk, The teacher needs to write a thought-provoking statement or a question related to the subject of the upcoming lesson on the board. Now, these can be pretty wide and varied, so I included a few examples pertaining to the boy in the striped pajamas here. First one, how can we characterize Bruno's father? And of course, you could rework this question to function in a variety of classes. I also have, what does the word prejudice mean to you? And then, why do you think looking out the window made Bruno feel very cold and unsafe? So you'll see that what all of these questions have in common is they are open-ended. So after reading the prompt or the question, the students have 2 to 4 minutes to read the topic, reflect, and then write a response. The reason for this sort of individualized time to reflect and to write beforehand is that we want to give students an opportunity to gather their thoughts before they begin discussing with their partners. Once the students are done writing down their response, they have 3 to 5 minutes to share their responses with their partner, and then they reflect and write a response to what his or her partner said. So just a note about some of these times, you can feel free to adjust them. I like 3 to 5 minutes for older students. And a little pro tip, make sure your students know who their partners are before you get started. I've included 3 different ways to characterize partners. The first one is shoulder partners. That's where students are sitting side by side so that their shoulders touch. And if you want them to work with the person next to them, you can just say, all right, work with your shoulder partners. Next one is eyeball partners. This is where students are sitting across from one another, so they're looking into each other's eyeballs. Those are eyeball partners. And then the last one is clock face partners. This is more easily used when you're sitting in a circle situation. So you can say clock face partners, that's going to be the person to their left, like you're going around in a circle. So once the students are all done sharing their thoughts in their pair and writing down their reflections, these pairs combine to form smaller groups of 4 to 6 students. So you can combine 2 or 3 pairs. And then the pairs share their responses with that small group, and one response is chosen to share with the whole class. Now, there's a little bit of a caveat to this. You're not choosing one response that one student gave. Rather, the students are hopefully going to have a conglomeration of what they've all discussed, and that's what they're going to be able to share. So hopefully by the time students have gotten to this point, they will have mixed and matched their responses based on the conversations they've had with their other group members. Now I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple examples of how I would use the table talk strategy with the boy in the striped pajamas. First of all, when you're building and activating background knowledge, there's some different types of questions you can ask. The first one for this book, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, is a historical fiction novel that relates Nazi treatment of the Jews during the Holocaust. What do you already know about the Holocaust that might be useful when you read this book? And of course, if you're reading anything that pertains to historical fiction, you can adapt this question accordingly. Second question I have is, describe what the word prejudice means to you. What causes prejudice? How can it be overcome? And once again, if you are talking about a term that's not necessarily so easily defined, you might want to adapt this question to work for your lesson that day. Since I would be using the table talk strategy to teach the boy in the striped pajamas in the context of an English class, these are a couple of questions that help students discuss literary elements in the story and how they affect the narrative. First one, in literature, the setting is the time and place in which the story occurs. The setting is especially important in historical novels such as this one. What is the setting of this novel? What specific details help the reader characterize the setting? Again, this is a very general question that you could adapt to pretty much any book you are reading. Second, a simile is a figure of speech in which two unlike objects are compared using the words like or as. For example, as they, the Nazi soldiers, left, they stood in a row together like toy soldiers. What is the author comparing? And what does this comparison suggest about the Nazi soldiers? Again, you could really fold in any quote from any book you are reading to discuss the function of a simile here. Finally, you can use table talk to address some post-reading activities. For this book, students might want to look at sort of the bigger picture and how what they've read sort of fits in with their learning. So the first question I've got is, do you agree with John Boyne's decision to present the events of the Holocaust through the eyes of a naive child? And how does this decision affect the story? And then who else would you like to have read this book? Why? I think these two questions really get to the idea of the heart quotient and showing how literature can affect our understanding of events and how discussing literature can really help us learn more about ourselves and increase our own empathy. All right, that's it. Thank you for watching my presentation, and I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you are interested, I've included a link to the trailer for The Boy in the Striped Pajamas here. Thanks again.